Ambassador Kithrix's four-chambered heart skipped several beats as the orbital shuttle descended through Earth's atmosphere. This wasn't the diplomat's first time visiting a Class 3 civilization, but something about humanity's recent military developments had the entire Galactic Council on edge. The briefing documents had been frustratingly vague, mentioning only unconventional defense systems and concerning technological priorities. The shuttle banked sharply, giving Kithrix a clear view of what waited below. Even from 5 kilometers up, the massive structure dominated the Australian landscape. A series of gleaming metal tubes, each larger than the largest Drachnid battlecruiser, pointed skyward at precise angles. The sight defied explanation. No species would waste resources on purely ballistic weapons, not in an age of plasma cannons and quantum disruptors. Impressive, isn't it? Captain Sarah Chen's voice carried a note of pride that Kithrix had learned to associate with humans discussing their accomplishments. Welcome to Project Babylon. The human officer stood with perfect military posture, her dark uniform bearing the insignia of Earth's United Defense Force. Kithrix's translator struggled with the reference, eventually suggesting it related to an ancient human civilization known for its towering structures. Captain, Kithrix's voice vibrated with carefully controlled diplomatic neutrality. My government is concerned about the scale of these installations. The Council's guidelines clearly state that developing worlds should focus on defensive capabilities. Chen's smile widened. Oh, these are purely defensive, Ambassador. Would you like to see how they work? Before Kithrix could formulate a properly diplomatic response, a klaxon sounded throughout the facility. Red warning lights began pulsing along the massive barrels, and Kithrix felt the ground trembling beneath their feet. Perfect timing, Chen exclaimed, leading the way to a reinforced observation bunker. We're about to conduct a demonstration. Standard asteroid deflection protocol. Through the bunker's transparent aluminum viewport, Kithrix watched in horror as the enormous weapons began to move. Hydraulic systems larger than city blocks adjusted their aim with impossible precision. The targeting computers, Chen explained with evident satisfaction, could track objects smaller than a transport pod at distances beyond lunar orbit. Target acquired, a synthetic voice announced. NEO 2187, mass approximately 2.3 million metric tons, current trajectory intersecting Earth defense sphere. Kithrix's secondary eyes widened in alarm. Surely you don't mean to. The first shot cut off the rest of the sentence. The sound struck Kithrix like a physical blow, even through the bunker's heavy shielding. A streak of light, brilliantly visible even in broad daylight, shot skyward. 5 more shots followed in rapid succession, each one carrying a projectile massing several tons. On the bunker's main display, Kithrix watched as the incoming asteroid, barely visible as a dot against the stars, suddenly bloomed into a cloud of debris. The fragments, their trajectories altered by the kinetic impact, spread out in a pattern that would safely miss Earth entirely. You see, Ambassador, Chen said quietly, we learned something important during our early space age. Sometimes the simplest solution is the most reliable. Yes, we could have built energy shields or gravity deflectors like other species, but kinetic energy, that's universal. That never fails. Kithrix found their voice after several moments of stunned silence. The power requirements for accelerating projectiles of that mass are enormous, Chen agreed, which is why we built our own antimatter production facilities. The Council said we couldn't have antimatter weapons. They never said anything about antimatter power plants. As they walked back to the main facility, Kithrix began composing their report in their head. How to explain this to the Council? Humans had taken the most primitive form of warfare, throwing rocks, essentially, and elevated it to an art form that rivaled the most advanced defensive systems in the galaxy. More concerning still was the gleam in Captain Chen's eye when she mentioned other projects in development. One last question, Captain. Why name them after ancient civilizations? Chen's laugh echoed off the facility's walls. Oh, that's simple. We found that naming superweapons after ancient powers helps with funding approval. Politicians love their historical references. Wait until you see Project Olympus, though that's still classified. Of course, Kithrix made a mental note to recommend increased diplomatic engagement with Earth. Any species that could build something like Project Babylon, while technically adhering to every council restriction, was either going to be a valuable ally or a terrifying enemy. Looking at the massive guns still cooling in the desert sun, Kithrix sincerely hoped for the former. 3 months after Ambassador Kithrix's inspection of Project Babylon, the Drachnid Empire made its move. Their war fleets, previously held in check by complex political maneuvering, began systematic incursions into human-controlled space. The massive ships, each one a city-sized testament to plasma technology and energy weapons, seemed unstoppable. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood before the United Earth Defense Council, her holographic presentation showing the latest intelligence on Drachnid fleet movements. The chamber's ancient marble columns contrasted sharply with the advanced technology filling the room, a peculiarly human juxtaposition that still drew confused looks from alien observers. Project Babylon proved our basic concept, Elena explained, her hands moving through the holographic display with practiced ease. But static planetary defense isn't enough anymore. We need something mobile, something they won't expect. Admiral James Chen, Sarah Chen's father and the architect of Earth's modern defense strategy, leaned forward in his seat. You're proposing we scale up the technology even further? Elena's smile would have made Kithrix nervous. No, sir. I'm proposing we think smaller, more precise, and much faster. The hologram shifted, showing a massive vessel unlike anything in Earth's current fleet. Where most ships bristled with sensor arrays and communication equipment, this design was brutally simple. A massive accelerator ran the entire length of the ship, with engineering spaces and crew compartments, almost as an afterthought. Meet the EDF Thunderstrike, Elena continued. Think of it as a mobile mass driver, but instead of firing simple projectiles, it launches what we're calling penetrator pods. Each pod contains a scaled-down version of our planetary defense systems. The council chamber erupted in murmurs as the implications became clear. One counselor, his voice thick with concern, spoke up. You're suggesting we build a ship whose sole purpose is to launch smaller guns. Exactly. Elena's enthusiasm was infectious. The Drachnid rely on energy shields and point defense systems designed to counter energy weapons and conventional missiles. They've never faced anything like this. Each penetrator pod is essentially a self-contained weapon platform that can attach to their hull and deploy its own array of kinetic weapons. We're fighting fire with Newton's laws of motion. Admiral Chen's laugh filled the chamber. It's brilliant. They'll be looking for engine signatures, energy readings, all the traditional signs of a weapon system. Instead, we're basically throwing rocks at them. Very sophisticated, very fast rocks. The technical specifications scrolled past on the holographic display. The Thunderstrike would be powered by a miniaturized version of Project Babylon's antimatter reactor. Its main accelerator could launch penetrator pods at speeds that made traditional railguns look like toys. Most importantly, it could be built using technology that was already approved under Galactic Council guidelines. There's more, Elena added, her expression growing serious. We've developed a new targeting system based on quantum entanglement. Once a pod attaches to an enemy ship, it can transmit targeting data back to the Thunderstrike instantly, allowing for coordinated strikes that bypass their defensive screens entirely. The council chamber grew quiet as the implications sank in. This wasn't just a weapon. It was an entire new approach to space warfare. The Drachnid Empire had spent centuries perfecting their energy weapon technology, building ever more powerful shields and beam weapons. They had never considered the possibility of an enemy who would choose to fight with what they would consider primitive technology. How soon can it be ready? Admiral Chen asked, already knowing the answer from his daughter's earlier reports. The prototype is already under construction at the lunar shipyards, Alina revealed. "We've been working on this since before Project Babylon was completed. The Thunderstrike isn't just a response to the current crisis. It's the next step in our defensive strategy." As the Council voted unanimously to accelerate the project, Alina's thoughts turned to the massive vessel taking shape in lunar orbit. The Drachnid Empire thought they understood human military technology. They had analyzed Project Babylon, concluded it was merely an impressive but limited planetary defense system. They had no idea what was coming. In the depths of space, the Drachnid war fleets continued their advance, their commanders confident in their superior technology and centuries of military doctrine. None of them had yet realized that humanity's apparent technological backwardness was not a weakness. It was a carefully crafted strategy. The age of energy weapons supremacy was about to meet something far more primitive and far more unstoppable. Human ingenuity armed with the basic laws of physics. Captain Maya Chen stood on the bridge of the EDF Thunderstrike, watching the tactical display as the Drachnid battle fleet approached the Proxima Centauri system. As the youngest daughter of Admiral Chen, she had fought hard against accusations of nepotism to earn her command. Now, humanity's newest weapons system was about to face its first real test. Multiple contacts entering the system, Lieutenant Park announced from the sensor station. Reading 15 capital ships, approximately 40 support vessels. Energy signatures match known Drachnid configurations. Maya nodded, her expression calm despite the butterflies in her stomach. The Thunderstrike's bridge was unlike any other spacecraft in Earth's fleet. Instead of the usual array of weapon stations and tactical displays, most of the space was dedicated to the massive firing control system that ran the length of the command deck. "Begin targeting calculations," she ordered. "Load penetrator pods 1 through 20 into the primary accelerator." The ship hummed with power as the antimatter reactor spooled up to full capacity. Deep within the vessel's core, 20 sleek pods were moved into position by robotic arms. Each one contained a miniaturized version of the same technology that made Project Babylon so effective, along with the quantum entanglement communicators that would allow for coordinated strikes. "Enemy fleet is advancing in standard combat formation," Park reported. "Their shields are at maximum power. They're charging weapon systems." Maya allowed herself a small smile. The Drachnid were following their standard tactical doctrine perfectly. Their ships were arranged in a three-dimensional sphere, with their most powerful vessels at the core of the formation. It was a formation designed to maximize the effectiveness of their overlapping energy shields and provide mutual fire support with their beam weapons. It was also exactly what the Thunderstrike had been designed to counter. "Send the challenge," Maya ordered. It was a formality, but one that would be important for the political aftermath of what was about to happen. The Drachnid response was predictably arrogant. Their commander, visible on the main screen, was a towering reptiloid whose scales gleamed with ceremonial oils. "This system is now under the protection of the Drachnid Empire. Your primitive vessels are no match for our fleet. Surrender and you will be treated according to the laws of war." Maya's response was to give the firing order. The Thunderstrike's main accelerator lit up like a new star as it launched its first salvo. The penetrator pods, each moving at a significant fraction of light speed, crossed the distance to the Drachnid fleet in seconds. Their energy shields, designed to deflect plasma bolts and laser fire, might as well have been tissue paper against solid objects moving at relativistic velocities. "Multiple impacts confirmed," Park announced, his voice tight with excitement. "Pods are successfully attached to 5 enemy capital ships. Quantum link is stable." The Drachnid fleet's elegant formation began to break apart as their commanders realized something was wrong. Their point defense systems, calibrated for energy weapons and missiles, had nothing in their targeting parameters that matched what they were facing. "Execute secondary deployment," Maya ordered. Across the surface of 5 Drachnid warships, the penetrator pods sprang to life. Panels opened, revealing ranks of smaller mass drivers. Each one began launching precisely targeted projectiles at crucial systems that had been identified by the pod sensors. Shield generators exploded. Weapon emplacements were shattered. Communication arrays were reduced to scrap. The remaining Drachnid ships began to turn, trying to bring their weapons to bear on the Thunderstrike. But Maya's ship was already moving, its engines pushing it into position for another salvo. The next wave of pods was already loaded. Enemy vessels are attempting to launch fighters, Park reported. 3 of the disabled capital ships are venting atmosphere. Their formation is breaking down. Maya watched as the mighty Drachnid fleet, pride of an empire that spanned hundreds of worlds, was systematically torn apart by what they had dismissed as primitive technology. Their energy weapons, when they managed to hit the Thunderstrike at all, were absorbed by the ship's heavily armored hull, another primitive solution that proved remarkably effective. Imperial flagship is transmitting the surrender signal, Park announced after the third salvo had reduced 2 more capital ships to drifting hulks. Maya keyed the communication system. This is Captain Chen of the EDF Thunderstrike. We accept your surrender. Be advised that any further hostile action will be met with immediate response. As the remains of the Drachnid fleet powered down their weapons, Maya sent a brief message to Earth. Proxima Centauri secured. Thunderstrike tactical doctrine proven effective. Requesting reinforcement for prisoner processing and salvage operations. In the aftermath of the battle, as shuttles began the work of evacuating Drachnid survivors, Maya found herself thinking about the irony of it all. The Drachnid Empire had spent centuries developing ever more sophisticated energy weapons and defenses, only to be defeated by what amounted to very fast rocks. Her sister Sarah would love the status reports from the penetrator pods. Apparently, several had impacted with enough force to leave perfect pod-shaped impressions in the Drachnid ship's armor. The Battle of Proxima would later be studied in military academies across the galaxy as the moment when humanity proved that technological sophistication didn't always mean technological superiority. Sometimes, the oldest principles of warfare, properly updated and applied with human ingenuity, were the most effective of all. The Galactic Science Academy on New Alexandria was hosting its first human speaker, and the anticipation was palpable. The vast amphitheater was packed with beings from across known space, each drawn by the promise of understanding how a primitive species had managed to defeat the mighty Drachnid Empire. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood at the podium, her holographic displays showing cutaway diagrams of both Project Babylon and the Thunderstrike. The audience included some of the galaxy's finest minds, including several Drachnid scientists who had been granted special permission to attend. The key to our success, Elena began, wasn't in developing new technology. It was in reconsidering old technology from new angles. Let me show you what I mean. The hologram shifted to show the internal mechanics of a penetrator pod. Consider the basic principle of kinetic energy. The formula is simple: half mass times velocity squared. The Drachnid Empire, like most advanced civilizations, focused on energy weapons because they seemed more sophisticated. But they forgot something fundamental. There's no shield in the galaxy that can ignore conservation of momentum. A ripple of discussion moved through the audience. A Drachnid scientist raised one of his primary limbs. But the power requirements for accelerating objects to such velocities would be enormous, Elena finished with a smile. Which is why we had to solve 3 fundamental engineering challenges. First, we needed a power source capable of providing the necessary energy. Second, we needed materials that could withstand the stresses involved. And third, we needed a way to ensure accuracy at relativistic speeds. The hologram shifted to show the antimatter reactor designs. The power problem was solved by miniaturizing our antimatter production and containment systems. We didn't invent new physics. We just found ways to make existing processes more efficient. The real breakthrough was in thermal management. She zoomed in on a section of the reactor. See these channels? They're filled with a metamaterial that actually becomes more efficient at heat transfer as temperature increases. It's based on the principle of negative thermal expansion, something we discovered by studying certain earth minerals. A Halixian physicist, their crystalline form refracting light in complex patterns, spoke up. but the structural integrity of any barrel capable of launching objects at such velocities. Exactly. Elena's enthusiasm was infectious. That was challenge number 2. We couldn't use energy fields. They would have interfered with the projectiles. Instead, we developed a new composite material. The hologram showed the molecular structure of the barrel material. We combined carbon nanotubes with a crystalline matrix inspired by spider silk. The material actually becomes stronger under stress, up to a certain point. The barrel of the Thunderstrike isn't just a tube. It's more like a living muscle that actively resists deformation. She paused as the audience digested this information. But the real genius, and I can say that because it wasn't my idea, was the targeting system. The display shifted to show the quantum entanglement communications array. Each penetrator pod contains particles entangled with corresponding particles in the Thunderstrike's firing control system. This allows for instantaneous communication and course correction, bypassing the light speed delay that would normally make accurate targeting impossible at these velocities. A young human scientist, recently graduated from the Lunar University, raised her hand. Dr. Rodriguez, is it true that the original inspiration for the penetrator pods came from ancient human artillery? Elena's smile widened. Indeed. Specifically, we were inspired by something called a shotgun, a weapon that fires multiple projectiles in a spread pattern. We just scaled it up a bit. The audience laughed, but there was an undercurrent of nervous tension. The implications were clear. Humanity had taken simple, well-understood principles of physics and engineering and applied them in ways that no one had considered possible. The final element, Elena continued, was something uniquely human, our willingness to embrace apparent contradictions. We built antimatter reactors to power what are essentially very sophisticated rocks. We used quantum entanglement to guide projectiles that would have been familiar to our ancient ancestors. We combined the most advanced materials science with principles of warfare that predate our written history. She gestured to the Drachnid scientists. Your empire's mistake wasn't in developing energy weapons. It was in assuming that was the only path forward. Humanity's strength isn't in inventing new physics. It's in finding new ways to use the physics we already understand. As the presentation concluded, the academic discussion continued long into the night. The implications went far beyond military applications. Humanity had demonstrated that technological advancement didn't always mean increasing complexity. Sometimes, the most elegant solutions were the ones that had been overlooked because they seemed too simple. 1 year after the Battle of Proxima, Ambassador Cathrix stood in the grand ceremonial chamber of the Galactic Council, watching as history unfolded. The massive chamber, with its soaring crystal spires and floating platforms, was packed with representatives from every spacefaring civilization. At the center of attention stood 3 figures: Admiral Chen, the Drachnid Emperor, and Council President Valera. The Treaty of New Alexandria, President Valera announced, her crystalline form shimmering with diplomatic protocols, marks not just the end of hostilities between the Drachnid Empire and humanity, but the beginning of a new approach to galactic defense. Thrix's attention wandered to the holographic display, showing the latest joint human-Drachnid project. After their defeat at Proxima, the Drachnid Empire had made an unprecedented decision. Rather than attempt to match humanity's weapons technology, they had proposed collaboration. The result was a hybrid defense system that combined Drachnid energy weapons with human kinetic innovations. The Sentinel program, Admiral Chen explained to the assembled dignitaries, represents a fundamental shift in how we approach space warfare, or more accurately, how we prevent it. The hologram showed a network of defense platforms being constructed throughout contested space. Each platform combined human-designed mass drivers with Drachnid shield technology and power systems. They were, in essence, miniature versions of Project Babylon that could be deployed anywhere they were needed. But the true breakthrough, the Drachnid Emperor added, his scales now dulled with age and wisdom, was not technological. It was philosophical. Cathrix understood what he meant: the human approach to warfare. taking simple principles and applying them in unexpected ways, had forced the entire galaxy to reconsider its assumptions. The Drachnid Empire, long accustomed to technological superiority, had learned humility. Other races were beginning to experiment with hybrid technologies of their own. The Sentinel platforms, Admiral Chen continued, will be jointly controlled by all signatory nations. No single power can activate them without consensus. They exist not to wage war, but to make war unthinkable. In the months following the treaty signing, Kithrix had the privilege of visiting Earth again. Project Babylon was still there, its massive guns pointing skyward. But now they were as much a tourist attraction as a weapons system. School groups from across the galaxy came to see them, learning about the physics and engineering principles that made them possible. The Thunderstrike, too, had been transformed. While it remained fully operational, it now served primarily as a training vessel. Teams of human and alien engineers worked together, studying its systems and developing new applications for its technology. Captain Maya Chen still commanded it, but now she spent more time teaching than fighting. Dr. Elena Rodriguez had perhaps undergone the most surprising transformation. Her presentation at the Science Academy had sparked a renaissance in what she called retrograde engineering, the art of finding new applications for old technologies. Research teams across the galaxy were revisiting abandoned technologies, looking for overlooked potential. You know what the funny thing is? Admiral Chen said to Kithrix during a private moment at the treaty celebration, "We never wanted to build super weapons in the first place. We just wanted to be left alone to explore the stars in our own way." Kithrix's translator struggled with the human phrase, but the meaning was clear. Humanity's greatest weapon had never been their massive guns or clever engineering. It had been their ability to think differently, to find new paths where others saw only dead ends. The massive defense platforms that now guarded trade routes and colonial worlds were impressive, but they were also redundant. No one wanted to test themselves against weapons that combined human ingenuity with alien technology. Peace had come not through superior firepower, but through the recognition that there was always another way to solve a problem. As the celebration concluded, Kithrix watched a group of young engineers, human, Drachnid, and a dozen other species, excitedly discussing plans for some new hybrid technology. They weren't interested in building weapons. They wanted to apply these principles to terraforming, to space exploration, to solving the fundamental challenges that all spacefaring races faced. The age of massive guns was ending, but the age of human innovation was just beginning. And this time, they wouldn't be doing it alone.